Hello, folks. Welcome to our Hangout on Air YouTube live show from the IMEC group, the Internet Marketing Experimental Cooperative brand, was it? What was it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
We can never remember the C. Cooperative, co-op market,
Combine.
Combine, collective. We're here. We're a group of people who've been involved in the search engine marketing industry for many, many years. The combined experience in this room probably goes back to the Napoleonic era. And we've been noticing, and maybe you have too, when you look at Google search results, we've been noticing some strange things. Most of the time, Google works great. You get what you want pretty quickly. You're looking for it. But from time to time, something just looks a little weird, a little odd, maybe even funny, or just makes you scratch your head. So for the next hour, we're going to walk through some examples that we've seen in many different ways and talk about what they seem to show and maybe even speculate about what they can teach us about how Google search works, what Google's trying to do better, how they could improve. So we've got a lot to go through.
Reverse engineering the algorithm?
Yeah, we're going to, by the end of the hour, we'll have figured out the Google search algorithm. It'll be awesome. We might need to go into the second hour for that. Let's plunge right in because we want to get through a lot of examples and we've got limited time. So I am going to share my screen here. Application, share. And are folks seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. We'll do this. Okay, then what we're looking at here, the first one, this is from Dan Petrovic.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Can I make a quick suggestion that maybe we do a very short introduction of each of our 5 IMEC Labs members, just for folks out there?
Yeah, thank you.
And you should kick that off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great thing to do. Right. I'm Mark Traphagen. I'm the Senior Director of Brand Evangelism for Stone Temple Consulting. That's enough about me. Rand?
Sure. Howdy, gang. I'm Rand Fishkin. I'm the founder of Moz, co-founder of inbound.org, currently the Wizard of Moz, and soon to be releasing a book called Lost and Founder next year. And very excited to get to join this group for our first live Hangout on Air. I think this is going to be a great experience.
Perfect. Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie Cushing. I'm the founder of Analytics. It started as a joke on Twitter and became a brand. I make data sexy. I focus a lot on analytics and the overlap between analytics and search.
Dan?
Dan Petrovic here, tuning in from Australia. I'm a director of Dijon Marketing.
And Eric?
And yes, I'm Eric Enge, founder of Stone Temple Consulting. Been doing SEO for a little while. Thought it was kind of fun to explore.
A little while.
Thank you, Rand. That was a good thing to do, and I appreciate you reminding us to do that. Let folks know who we are. Now let's see if I can find my, my PowerPoint again.
So while Mark puts this up, for viewers who prefer to keep looking at the screen that Mark is putting up, my suggestion is that you click on the box down below where it shows the web page currently, and even when the rest of us are talking, you'll still continue to see the search.
Well, actually, since we're broadcasting this on YouTube Live, there's nothing for them to click on. But,
oh, that's right. Sorry.
it just looks like a video, but yeah, we'll do the best we can here. All right, we're going to plunge right in. This first example is from Dan Petrovic. And I'm going to, since we're going to have to go back and forth and do the screen here, I'm going to walk through it quickly and then let Dan tell us a little bit more about it, and then we'll discuss it. So the basic introduction here is that Dan was doing a search for something called BK9, which is a kind of grass. And he'll tell us a little bit more about that in the future. But we just put that in. There's a lot of things that have a similar kind of number designation. So the search result has a high degree of ambiguity, and none of the results were what he was looking for. So he had to go to the next level of specificity, which is BK9 grass. Now there's medium ambiguity, and there's actually, in that, if you're seeing the whole SERPs, there's 2 results that actually relate to what he's looking for. He got a little more specific, Zoysia, which is actually one of the scientific names of what BK9 is, added that in. The ambiguity went really low. Now it was very specific to what he was looking for. However, and a lot of useful results. It's much more specific. But when he went even more detailed, as you can see at the top there, I'm going to mispronounce, but Zoysia japonica and Zoysia tenuifolia, hybrid called BK9, while the ambiguity now is totally low. I mean, all the results are exactly what he's looking for. The useful results are gone. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dan. Dan, explain to us why it got less useful when you went to the least level of ambiguity in the results.
Yeah, I'm gonna call this one the Clippy syndrome. It really reminds me when Office used to have little Clippy, and Clippy thinks that you're looking or to type up a letter and you're really not. So it's starting to suggest silly things to you. So if you can share the screen so I can illustrate in the last example there what we're seeing. So this is the query that's very long. Zoysia japonica and Zoysia tenuifolia hybrid called BK9. I'm literally spelling it out for Google, right? But what's happening is Google is shoving all these other results down my throat, thinking, no, you don't need that. You really need something else. And after 2 decades of Googling, almost, you start to get a sense for how Google works, and something with the rank brain really changed. And I think when I'm seeing a lot more of this, no, you really need this thing, not what you're searching for. So Google is making up their own mind what I want, and that's a little bit unsettling for me. So if we go through the first query, BK9, fair enough, it's very ambiguous, and I'm getting the knives, the synthesizers, restaurant somewhere. I'm getting 0 useful results. Why? Because other terms are a lot more prominent. This is a botanist term that I'm looking for, very obscure. But when I put grass in there, that should be enough for Google. Google's quite sophisticated now. So what I was surprised with is, because I consider ambiguity at this level to be medium. And I'm getting a certain area in Malaysia, like a suburb. I'm getting a synthesizer, grass information, only 2 useful results all in all. Now, when I refine my query to Zoysia BK9, I got useful 7 results, but amazingly, I'm still seeing the synthesizers and the knives and all sorts of things. They're like, are you sure you want that? Like, maybe you should look at synthesizers. I mean, I love electronic music, but it's really not what I'm after. So what blew my mind in the end, at the end of my query process, and this is what rank brain's meant to solve: real, natural, long questions, things that people have never asked before. I'm guessing Zoysia japonica and Zoysia tenuifolia hybrid called BK9 has never been asked before. I'll be very surprised if that exact query was typed in. And Google says this was what their supervised and unsupervised algorithms are supposed to solve. So I think this is, I'm just opening up a discussion as well. I'm saying as much of a problem as it solves, Google's algorithms and AI open up a new problem when they're sort of creating a bubble or deciding what we want to see instead of what we really want to see.
Yeah, Dan.
So, oh, go ahead, Rand.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like there's something really interesting here from the sort of use of words and how Google starts to build these, I almost want to call them entity associations, right? And they've said like, no, BK9 we've associated with a bunch of entities that are not the grass, but we have not yet associated it with the grass. And then when you enter the word, I think it's Zoysia or Zoysia, that one is associated with another group of entities that's also not BK9, right? But is more grass focused. And so you start to get these less useful results. And I think that, one of the big takeaways I have as a marketer is when you are thinking about how people are going to be searching for the words and phrases that you come up with, right? Whatever you're branding your products, your services, your company, your personal brand with, you'd better create that association very strongly all over the place on the web and in the minds of searchers. Otherwise, Google might associate it with something else, especially when I'm thinking about like, oh, I want to create a new domain or a new product name. This exact example is going to sit very heavily in my head, when I go out and create my next startup next year and I'm thinking about what am I going to call it?
Zoysia
Yeah,
terrifolia or whatever is what you.
Yeah, I'm not calling it Zoysia.
these latent semantic terms are easily solved, and a lot of people forget this tip. It's called market research. You go out there and you ask people. So what I did to solve one of these problems, I used Google Surveys, and I uploaded a picture of the grass. It's a specific grass with a specific look. And I showed users the photo of that grass, and I said, describe it. Tell me what you would type in Google to find this grass. You don't know what it's called. And I got the terms like undulating, lumpy, bumpy, fairy garden, things I would never consider to put in my blog if I was writing about it. So the best way to solve this, is just go out there and ask people. Doesn't matter how you use it. Like I use Google Surveys. You can use all sorts of other platforms or ask them offline. It really helps. But final comment I think about the query that I was going through is that Google should have made this implicit connection. They should have inferred the connection between the BK9 and the other term that you're mentioning, Zoysia, and the grass, and say, oh, okay, particularly because it was a string of queries. And they should have figured it out.
One after another.
Right,
I
but
mean,
I think what we're seeing, though, is that Google isn't as far along in understanding concepts as we might all like to think, right? They have a long, long way to go with this. And I think what you're seeing here, Dan, is something that's very classic in Google search, which is a decade ago, we all learned to do shorter search queries, which much more carefully selected words to get what we wanted to get, because the extra words, which, by the way, are still being interpreted, in my opinion, in your query, are actually not helping it. So it's coming up more false matches. It's taking this little piece and saying, okay, BK9, that's incredibly popular. Clearly, he must mean this thing, and all these other words are nonsense. And this other thing is rare. So this is kind of what I think is going on. And it feeds into my understanding of rank brain, which is not the conventional wisdom on rank brain, by the way, which I think rank brain has a much simpler structure than most people give it credit for. My understanding of it is that what it does is it builds a vector out of your Zoysia ternifolia with the 6 other words, and then it looks, it builds a word vector out of it, and looks for other word vectors which are kind of similar, and it looks at historical search results on those word vectors. By the way, they don't have any for that very long query of yours, and so it can't match you with anything. So that's not really what RankBrain does well. So it doesn't surprise me that it is essentially of no help here.
All right, I am going to move us along to the next one. I'm sure there's a ton more we could say about that. Unless, Annie, you had something you wanted to add about that one?
No, you lost me at RankBrain.
Probably lost most of us at RankBrain. Back 2 years ago. Okay, let's move on to this next example. This one is from Rand, and it is the query shades. And what you're seeing here, if you're looking at my screen, is I had to, because it was such a long first page of results, I had to break it into 3 columns, but that's all from the first page. So Rand, why don't you explain what we're seeing here, and then I'll talk again so people can look at it.
Yeah, so this is one of those queries, and I think your results, Mark, from Boston are more, are less diverse, actually, than the results that I was seeing from Seattle when I performed it originally. But I think the truly interesting thing about this, well, there's 3 things I wanted to call out. One is I wanted to call out the fact that you can see those 4 ads above the top. And I think that when we, as SEOs, see that, sometimes we get scared and turned off from doing SEO. And I think that's actually a dumb thing, especially on a query like this, where a small % of the searches are coming from highly monetizable users who are searching specifically for window blind treatments. And there's enough of a click-through rate for Google to justify a high propensity of ads. But then there are many people who are searching for other things, specifically sunglasses and also potentially brands associated with shades, like the one you see from Twitter here, The Shades. And in those cases, I think that if you are automatically turned off from doing SEO when you see tons of ads above the fold, I think that might be a mistake, and I would urge you not to do that. Second thing that's going on here that's really interesting is that Google is not 100% sure what you might need. So you can see Shades clothing, Shades clothing, Shades game, Shades color, Shades sunglasses, Shades definition. And when I performed the query, one of the other results had to do with the terminology, which I think maybe was trending at the time, around throwing shade, which is singular, right? And in American vernacular colloquialism, it means to cast aspersions or sort of sidingly insult someone. But regardless, so the fact that you have queries where lots of things can be interpreted different ways, but all the ads lead to one thing, in my mind, makes for a fascinating marketing opportunity. So I wanted to highlight this one.
Right, I'm going to chatter just for a second here to give people a chance to bring my screen up again and get people to quickly browse it. You can see the great variety of results that are on this screen. At the in the third column at the bottom, you see the related searches and how different those are that Ram was just speaking about, for store, color, glasses, game, clothing, etc. We have map results here. We have Twitter results. It's all over the map. All right, back over to you guys.
So yeah, I like this query for one reason, is that it actually pertains to one of the clients that we work with. And there was actually a period of time when there was a very strong dose of sunglass results here. And you could also see the R&B band.
Is that because it's October instead of July?
It could be.
That's it.
Yeah, and then for a while the R&B band, The Shade, or The Shades, or whatever, I'm not sure the exact name, but there is one, was out there, and I don't know, maybe they released an album or something. So so the thrashing and change in this result over time has been dramatic. Like Google hasn't quite figured out the intent, and they're struggling with it.
Yeah, so they're collecting user behavior data now and working out what to do with it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Dan, is that I think there's a lot of like, well, what did this person search for before, right? If you just moved to a new apartment or a new house and you've performed searches for furniture, I bet I know what you want when you search for shades. But if you're an R&B fan, when you search for shades, I bet you want this totally other thing. And they're pretty good at it unless you haven't done the query before or haven't done related queries, in which case they just have to, throw the kitchen sink at you and hope for the best.
Were you suggesting like a Trojan horse tactic for SEO? Like we have a slightly ambiguous query. It's all saturated with ads and results, but there's no Twitter, there's no strong Twitter account. So we're going, great, I'm going to build up this Twitter account that's slightly different off topic. I'm going to feed this to Google diversity algorithm. Boop, I get in. Is that a little bit unethical?
That might be a little more gray hat than what I'm suggesting. But I do think there's more SEO opportunity here, especially if you're serving the non-commercial intent searchers for this query. And that's sort of my, my marketing brain saying like, wait, how could I, as a marketer, potentially take advantage of this?
So there's another concept that I want to bring up with relationship to this result too. And that is that if you've got 4 things on the first page that are about blinds, and you are marketing sunglasses, right? So, in classic SEO think, let's say the blinds, just to make it easy for people, are in positions 2 through 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know that's not exactly what it is, but just to help you visualize it. If I'm marketing sunglasses and I'm doing my SEO and I have to have a mental model in my mind that ranking in positions 2, 3, 4, and 5 is not possible for me. I can get to position 6. My next step might be position 1. And it isn't going to, because Google has kind of made a decision that somebody who provides window shades or blinds needs a very strong presence on the first page. And that means there's less opportunity for me as a marketer of sunglasses. And I have to really think about how I tweak the way I approach my SEO opportunity and how I prioritize this. Eric,
do you think that's fixed, or do you think that that is driven by user behavior? Like if more people started clicking on sunglasses in those results because you had a particularly excellent sunglasses offering, or like, you know, it was summer again and sunglasses were hotter than, you know, window blinds again, do you think that might shift?
It might. I don't know that it does it in real time, that it shifts around that, but it could indeed shift at some level. I'm getting rid of some of my glare here. Sorry about that. There we go. But a simpler example, because we're going to get into one of mine in a moment, is, you know, if I've got a row of images across the search results, I'm not going to displace the row of images, or there's a YouTube video. I don't want to say that it's impossible, but I think it's a shift that's happening at a different level. Like user engagement with content is at a different level than something I might do to improve the content to my site, or improve keyword usage, or some sort of brand marketing campaign to bring in a whole bunch of links. That doesn't help Google with its user intent problem.
You know, speaking of images, one thing I've been curious about for a long time is why Google doesn't implement the carousel filter in its regular search results like we have in images, for, you know, particularly for these kind of short tail keywords that can have multiple meanings. Like, for example, yeah, I just searched for Emma Watson, and across the top you have, you know, categories that I guess people most commonly search for: tattoo, Beauty and the Beast, Harry Potter, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wonder if Google will even at any point entertain this possibility, because I think with searches like this, or Apple, or, you know, searches where there can be multiple applications and multiple intents, you know, more informational versus transactional, if that would help users. Because just looking at this screenshot that Rand had and doing the search myself, I mean, it's a shit show, you know, trying to figure out, well, you know, what exactly is it that you want. It's just like, it just seems like Google's just like pouring everything out onto a single search page. Like, here are 80 bajillion, you know, ads, here are images, here, you know, it's just like a little bit of everything, which is overwhelming.
Like kind of like a slider for all the window shades, a slider for all the sunglasses,
or at least with links to you know, a more specific search, like what you have in Google Images. If I search for Emma Watson and I click on Beauty and the Beast, I'm going to have a completely different search results page that would seem much more tailored to, you know, what exactly I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the weird things is, obviously we've talked about how Google's gone mobile first. In some places, I worry they've gone mobile only. Right, and when you search on desktop, you actually get a worse experience that serves your interests worse. And I think I don't think that's good for Google or good for searchers. It's odd.
No, because in some ways we've kind of come full circle, where, you know, Google used to be the you know, like the antithesis of Yahoo, which was like, here's everything you could possibly want, you know, plus 300 more results, you know. And it seems like they're kind of edging their way more toward a Yahoo experience, where, you know, their original, you know, the original reason why Google took off is it was just so, you know, it was so extraordinary in its simplicity. You know, it was like you didn't have all of that that clutter. So Google's kind of becoming like all of our homes, you know.
Right, but it worked out really well for Yahoo. Oh wait.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm going to be like Google and decide that I know what you want better than you know what you want, and move on to the next query. So here it is. This one is from Eric, and it's Ashton Kutcher videos. Apparently, Eric's a big fan. But what Eric noticed here is that that when he puts this in, he's looking specifically for videos. It's right in the query, and not surprisingly, Google gives us 4 different YouTube videos right at the top, which is something that a lot of people complain about. They say, you know, Google's favoring its own product there. But what Eric noticed is that if you keep going through the results, that's the last 4 YouTube videos you see. And there are hundreds, thousands of Ashton Kutcher videos on YouTube. So it goes to all the other channels. So we've had a chance to see the result. Eric, now you explain what you think about this.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to explain it a little further. In fact, I'm going to share an additional chart here from a study that we did. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if we looked at a whole series of different YouTube videos, search queries, and these were queries that were designed to bring up lots of videos in the results. And we noticed that the YouTube video results, 90% of all the video results, YouTube video results that showed in the top 100 were in the top 10. And the distribution, it drops off very rapidly, obviously. Outside the top 30, you couldn't find a single YouTube video. And in contrast, until the first batch of YouTube videos was done, you never saw a video from a third-party source. How
is that not violating antitrust with a hard coding? That is infuriating. I'm sorry. That just breathe. I just got to control myself.
So
I got to remember that Google spends tens of millions of dollars lobbying Congress people, and that is okay. It's okay.
So no, it really struck me, and it strikes. Well, it seems like an artifact of the way that they originally did what they called universal search, right? Or what did they call it? I forget what they called it when they launched it.
Yeah. That is the most generous interpretation I could possibly imagine. It's very kind of you, Eric.
Yeah.
So
if I'm Larry and Sergey, I'm sending my check to Stone Temple.
Yeah. It's got to be a big one. Yeah, no, it was just really odd that we saw this across this set of results, and it really did look particularly unbalanced. And it's I think that what it tells me, first of all, there's your issue, which you've rightly called out, Rand, but then there's also that there's these various algorithms which are clearly wedged into the search results in a way which is very distinct and different, and not necessarily the most integrated, with the rest of the way their SERPs work.
Yeah, I think that, let's see. So as a marketer, as a non-consumer, right? It, maybe pisses me off on the consumer side, but on the marketing side, one thing it strongly suggests is that if you're going to invest in a video strategy, you can certainly think about putting things on your own site and capturing people there and making that your primary channel. But you probably also need, especially if people are looking for your content in video form, you need to use YouTube. Google's essentially forcing you, because they're saying the majority of the clicks, the majority of the top 5 results are going to be YouTube, and that's hard-coded.
I just glanced, Dan, just as a contrast, I just glanced at the live chat here, and Greg Jarbo noted that YouTube gets billions of views. I think maybe he's implying by that maybe in their algorithm that they've earned their way to that top spot.
Well, but counterpoint to that, Google doesn't know how many views a Whiteboard Friday gets on Moz or from Wistia. Has no idea, right? And so it can't even take that into account. And I can tell you very honestly that Whiteboard Friday videos do get, about 20,000 people will watch the video in the first month that it's out, and a few hundred will watch it on YouTube 3 months later when we produce it there. But once the YouTube result goes up, it is usually the, that's the result that ranks in Google. So it's a frustrating thing. It's not universally true. We do try and change up the titles. We obviously optimize the Wistia version that goes, embedded on Moz's site. But it's a tough workaround to make sure that you get the traffic and can control the user experience rather than Google controlling it through YouTube, which is, as many, most of you know, far less marketing opportunity.
Now, one very practical point about that from an analytics standpoint is one of the biggest mistakes I see is people not taking advantage of being able to link back to their site from every single YouTube video they publish. So it's very important to put a link to your site. You need to make sure it's actually a coded link, so it has to have the protocol, has to have the HTTP, HTTPS, and link it back to your site so that at least you have the potential of getting some kind of traffic. And I usually kind of entice people like, this video is based on this post, or you can get this downloadable, item from the website, etc.
Yeah, Annie, I love that advice, and I even love more the secondary piece of it you mentioned, which is you need to have some sort of call to action in the video that says, if you're interested in this, or if you want more, or for the next piece, or to get the free download, to try the tool, go here, and then have the embed. Because I think that a lot of times when you just mention your site, the click-through rate's very small unless there's an incentive.
Right.
And don't forget the syndication and scrapers of YouTube content. So I created a video that went viral, and in the description I said, people from Dijon have created this video just talking about us in the third person. So, and provided the link. So every time that video was put in an article or in a newspaper, they just journalists took copy paste, boop, put it in. We got a link back to our site. So that's that next benefit. But I think the question that was just asked before is really interesting. Did YouTube earn its place? I think it doesn't have to be about the video popularity. Video could be like the famous 301 views, and it could still be there in the results. But I think there's a little bit more at play. I think there's, as much as people say there is no such thing as domain authority, people say it's per page level always. I think there is such a thing as Google knows what each domain is. So there's arguments on both sides. So one example what we see is Wikipedia results keep coming in, and individual Wikipedia pages don't have to be of high page authority themselves. They just have to belong to Wikipedia. The same thing I'm seeing in Australian search queries for various accommodation places. Like there are a certain number of domains, hotel providers and aggregators, that keep getting into the results. If you look on a page level authority, nothing, like 10. Or whatever metric you take, it's really low, but it's almost like hard-coded. We need a bit of Wikipedia, we need some YouTube, we need a bit of Expedia in there, that just cherry-pick the results that belong to certain types of domains that provide certain type of experience and expectation from the users. So I think Google's just saying, when a query is a little bit ambiguous, they say, we need a bit of this and a bit of that, and the page authority doesn't matter so much as our trust for this site in general. So I think a little bit of that could be at play when we look at all these YouTube results at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right after this, I'll be spending an hour on YouTube Live debunking the idea that there's no concept of authority in a domain. That is insanity. All right. I think Mark's trying to move us along, which is wise.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the hint. So this next one is from Annie, and this is kind of a fun one, and this is something I think most of us have seen here. This particular search is search for Grand Canyon, and what Annie wants to call our attention to is down at the lower right. So this is the, whoops, went back to that. Okay.
Very lower right.
Yeah, the very lower right. In the knowledge panel on the right, Google's trying to do some new cute things here, saying like a did you know kind of fact. But the fact that it shares is not all that interesting. It's kind of lame. It's like, why would you even bother to put that there? And maybe points to that algorithms aren't as good at knowing what's really a fun fact as we may be. So Andy, you want to comment more to that?
Yeah. So, this started with a search a while back for the Poconos, because I always try to go up to the Poconos when the leaves change colors. And that was when I first noticed this whole did you know thing. And usually there's some kind of interesting fact. So, like for example, the Grand Canyon, I think it was. Yeah, it said, did you know the park was founded as Grand Canyon National Monument in 1908 by President Theodore Roosevelt, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's quite a bit of difference in the quality. So that's kind of more informational. But then the Pocono Mountains one is a promotion for a Malibu dude ranch, letting you know you can ride horses in mornings or afternoons on 800 acres. So that's definitely much more promotional in intent.
And personalized for you, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, because, I just live out my life on dude ranches. But then when I was just, curious and searched for Yellowstone National Park. And then that's when I found, like, did you know millions of people come to see it each and every year? I'm like, actually, you know what? I did know that, Google.
I think everyone knows that.
I realized that I showed the good result in my example. Your other ones that you shared were more of the kind of offbeat ones.
Yeah. So, but each time, like so I was just curious. So I searched multiple times, just even during the Hangout for Yellowstone, and it pulled out like different little factoids from different sites of varying quality. So I guess they're probably still adjusting the knobs on this, but I would be curious to see how they even determine what gets put in there. Obviously the bar is not too terribly high, but just where they pull this information from, and how they determine what goes in there.
There's no way you'll be able to see it, but I just did the search for Yellowstone, right? And I'll read it. It says, questions and answers. This is the first thing that comes up on your Yellowstone National Park. What type of season or vacation time of the year is it at Yellowstone now? September 1st. Now, September 1st. And the answer, summer. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's what they're telling. Like, did you know that whenever this person asked this question on September 1st, it was summer? Thank you. I guess if you don't know that Yellowstone's in the Northern Hemisphere, maybe that's confusing. I see, Dan was upset. He didn't know what time of year it might be up north there.
Your ad dollars at work.
Because the knowledge graph, I agree with you, Annie. I think knowledge panel and knowledge graph data is significantly far behind the rest of the algorithm in terms of quality. And it's interesting that oftentimes it is the most, whatchamacallit, like not boring, but quiet and staid types of results where they get it wrong for long periods and doesn't seem to update.
Yeah, and it does seem slow, very slow to update. Like it doesn't seem to be too impacted by, QDF or anything.
Yeah. We were just at State of Search, and one of the things that came up to Google's Gary Eish there was about the oftentimes in a knowledge panel or a what do I want to say, featured snippet result at the top, that you'll now see the result from the answers from one site and the images from another site, and it had nothing to do with it. And he said, rather surprisingly, it's intentional. Not that it's a bad image, it's intentional. They want to spread the diversity of the query. So their thinking is, we give the text snippet to one site, we give the image to another site. But what he admitted was that they're really, really bad at picking a relevant image, and the algorithm has a lot to go on that.
Look, it's a terrible experience, but we designed it intentionally.
We're intentionally terrible.
It's intentionally terrible. Right?
I think that's better than accidentally being bad at something. At least you maybe know how you can fix it.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously willing to throw things out there before, the old wine commercial, we will serve no wine before it's time. They'll serve the wine plenty before it's time. And
that actually is probably a good thing, because I think it probably means that a lot of good stuff does get released before it's considered perfect, And that means that, you know, searchers can benefit and marketers can benefit maybe before.
But I do think that this is a bit of a lost opportunity. One, I couldn't trigger the did you know in any other query. Like I'm going to this really creepy Halloween parade in Galway, Ireland in a couple of weeks, and it's called Macnas, and it has like 3-story high, like creepy floats and stuff. And there was no did you know for that. So then I searched like other things like Macy's Day Parade, Super Bowl, Mardi Gras, no did you know. So I searched for Harvey Weinstein. And like that would be a really good did you know, you know?
Did you know? Don't go to his hotel room.
Yeah.
Things you don't want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, you know, anyway, so I think it could be a really cool feature, and it doesn't seem like it would be that terribly difficult to, you know, pick out interesting facts for, you know, people and, you know, events and things like that, because there are so many of them that, like, you know, like some weird fact about Mardi Gras or, you know, Harvey Weinstein. But so hopefully they'll put a little more attention toward that.
Okay, well now for something completely different. This is from Rand, and this is going to be a series of slides here, so watch this carefully. What Rand did here was type in a, you know, fairly common type of query, domain registration, and you see the results that you get here. Now, he typed another query, register a domain. The two queries are, you know, no human could tell them apart in intent. You know, domain registration, I'm looking for a place to register my domain. Register a domain, I'm looking for a place to register my domain. But look how different the results are. We go on to domain registers, reverse the words. Unless you memorize, you probably don't realize it, but again, this is a different set of results, a different order. And domain name registration, yet another set of results. So, you know, what do you want to say about that, Rand?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those where I certainly have been giving the advice, and to be fair, I mean, I think it has been pretty true that Google is doing a much better job of surfacing similar results for similar queries most of the time. But there are a few of these head queries, right? Things that are extremely popular, very monetizable, very valuable to rank up there, and, you know, get incredible search volume, that have these differences. Even though, and the difference is as subtle as the ordering of words. So register domain versus domain register, right? Or registration domain versus domain registration. You can just change the order, or you can add the word a in between them, and you will get dramatically different results, even though, to your point, Mark, the intent is the same. And what I was trying to surface here is, while Google has done a lot of that intent matching to queries, keyword order still matters, right? The order that your title tag is in, the order that you put your meta description in, how you describe things, how you get anchor text links, right? The order of the anchor text that you get, and how you construct your brand around it, right? So Google Domains, I don't know if you noticed, but Google Domains was one of the elements that ranked when you changed around the ranking order. They went from like number 4 to number 1. And that is because, I think, because of how they branded their domain registration service and how they got links to it, which primarily say, you know, Google, I think it's Google domain registration, not Google register a domain, right? And GoDaddy is GoDaddy register a domain, not GoDaddy domain registration. So that branding matters quite a bit. And I think that's an important takeaway. It's an edge case. I don't still see it that frequently. Most of the time I do see most of the results in order, even when you change these up pretty significantly. But in this case, it was not like that. And there are a few others. Yeah,
it's interesting because one of the challenges they have is sometimes these little differences actually do change the intent of the query. So one of the examples I always like to give is digital camera versus digital cameras. And in the plural case, you're more likely to want reviews. And you'll see that actually if you do the search queries, you'll see you get more review sites in that scenario. I'm not trying to let them off the hook for this one in your example, but there clearly is some situations where very subtle differerences actually do relate to some difference in intent.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I mean, for sure on the singular plural thing, if you search for, I think I saw this with best Android phone versus best Android phones, and singular was individual, different phones, right? Like the Pixel 2 or whatever, review of that. Google's Pixel 2, is this the best Android phone ever? And then you pluralize it, and it's all lists and comparisons,
right?
Which makes total sense.
In the chat, find it again here. Josh Baczynski says register domain is lower in the sales funnel. I think he's thinking that register domain is more of an intent, like a stronger intent. What do you think about that, Rand?
Possible. I mean, I'd have to interview a lot of people who did both queries before I felt confident saying that, but that is a good theory for sure.
To me, it sounds as if Google implied how to register a domain. So they almost like added the how to invisible query to it.
Well, I think that are all these results commercial except for the one featured snippet?
I think they are.
I think most of them are just domain registrar. So it's like, GoDaddy or register.com or Google domains, and then they just mix up the order. But yeah, Dan, good point on the featured
in the
snippet.
screenshot. Wasn't there like quick answers and the featured snippet in one of them?
Yeah, one of them did have that.
The people also ask.
There, I'm showing it now.
Yeah. What does it say
instructional.
for me to register a domain? So I'm thinking how to register a domain. So it's instructional.
Yeah, and all the as I said, people also ask. They're all how to, how can I, how do you? Yeah.
But none of the rest of the results.
No, they're just straight up
toward instructional.
Yeah. So it's only this one that Google thinks, domain name registration or registered, domain registration, those kinds of things are perceived to be the commercial go do it. And then this one is sort of a how to, which is why the featured snippets there. Makes sense. And again, when you're doing your keyword research, if you're not looking at which search results come up and whether there's, people also ask boxes and those kinds of things, probably important to do.
Well, and that's an important point to, like I try to talk to clients about, looking at the actual query for the term that they want to rank for. And a lot of times that step is overlooked. I'll tell them, look at the sites that are competing, for the query that you want to rank for. Are they competing with a blog post, or are they competing with a landing page, or are they competing with the category page? And if you understand the types of results that come up for a particular query, you could do something like have an informational page, with like an instructional step-by-step how to register a domain, the gotchas, these types of things, like the things to look for, with a link to your your landing page, and vice versa, to kind of double down on both the, the more research intent oriented queries as well as the more transactional queries.
Yep.
Excellent advice.
Let's go from the tech world to the fashion world. And this is a search that Eric did. Okay, Eric, I'm okay with this.
Yes.
Eric searched the outfits.
Gentlemen should be able to, care about fashion.
That's right.
There you go. That's me. Based on everybody who sees how I dress normally, it's absolutely reasonable to expect that I'd be very concerned about fashion.
Yeah, people walk in the office here every day and say, Eric, cute outfit. And this is why. So when Eric searches, or anybody searches cute outfits, what Eric observed here is that just about all of the organic results, I cut off the ads here, but all the organic results, except for the image carousel, are all from Pinterest. This is a first page of all Pinterest results. Have at it, IMEC gang.
Yeah, so this was actually called out for someone by me, and it was like, as soon as they mentioned to me this result, it's actually one of the guys who worked here. I said, you got to show that to me, because I'm thinking that the ranking algorithm here is a little bit different than the normal ranking algorithm. But Pinterest is amazingly strong in the search results overall, first of all. In some market spaces we've done research on, it's like Pinterest results show up in the top 5 for 30% of the queries. So it just tells you there's some amazing opportunities around Pinterest optimization for getting yourself in really good spots in search results. But the second lesson is there's some queries like cute outfits where I think what's going on is the people who actually have sites that sell clothing, this is not something they build into their category hierarchy. And I could be wrong that maybe if they actually did do something along those lines, that they would have a chance of breaking into the results for a page like this. But it's the kind of thing, it's an optimization thing that most people aren't thinking about, is what this is telling me.
If anything, I think SEOs help websites remove this product metadata by no indexing things like word clouds and tag pages and things. So this is like, you would put this in the product keywords, right? Cute outfits, perhaps.
Right.
And that sort of page would be like, we would advise no index, because it would be seen as like, you know, one of those tag pages, and you don't want that in Google's index. So I think we really need to consider how this fits into the actual content. And I think you don't want that in that, like, you don't want 100,000 tag pages indexed on your site. That's fluff. So thinking about embedding that in your content, and that's helpful because you don't want to be the stock standard description that everyone else has from copy paste from the supplier. You want to have that unique description. I think this is interesting, but in Australia, I'm seeing 2 results from Pinterest, and the rest is Glamour and Just Marvelous, Cosmopolitan, Elle, and so it seems a little bit more diverse here.
Yeah, I just did the query on mobile. I'm in Oregon, Southern Oregon right now, and yeah, I'm seeing all Pinterest first page as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing Pinterest.
What happened to domain crowding, anti-domain crowding algorithm? What?
I mean, I've seen this with Yelp. I've seen it with Etsy recently. I saw it with an odd site that I hadn't expected. I think it was like Good Housekeeping or something. I saw it recently. So I think there's been a shift from the no domain crowding rules of sort of 3-4 years ago to a, well, okay, if you're the site that everyone always goes to for this, we'll just show you.
Right.
The domain authority?
That's in our next hour. Stay tuned.
Yeah. The rant hour.
So, you know, I want to kind of hit on the category page or archive page thing that was mentioned, because for a long time that has been the de facto standard advice, you know, like no index your archive tag, you know, those like low quality pages. But I saw, having publisher clients, those pages tend to rank really, really well a lot of times for the head terms. So for example, I had a client who, when unfortunately Robin Williams committed suicide, they pulled together this, you know, this blog post about, you know, about him, about his life, and they ranked really well for it. But then, you know, after QDF wore off, that just means query deserves freshness. And, you know, months later, people weren't searching for it as much. Their category page, or it was actually a tag page for Robin Williams, they had no extra text on the page. It was just your classic tag page, was ranking at the bottom of page 1 for Robin Williams, you know. And so it just used to be my standard advice, you know, like no index, Google doesn't want it. But now, before I recommend no indexing, I look at the organic landing pages to see if there are any category or tag or any kind of archive pages that are actually getting organic search results. And then I'll recommend that they, you know, use a WordPress plugin to add, you know, some static text to the page, add a carousel of images, especially if it's like a celebrity or something like that, something to add visual interest and kind of pull the reader in. But I tend not to just give that carte blanche advice that Google doesn't want it, because sometimes Google very much wants it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was actually going back to status search and Gary Eish talking there again. One of the things he said is, even though he recognizes that a lot of people talk about, a lot of SEOs talking about taking thin content out of the index, or, you know, canonicalizing it or whatever, a lot of times Google's preferred solution is you make the page better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For whom is that not the preferred solution? Right?
Google has spoken.
If you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages, and you only have a few people who can work on them, absolutely you have to, direct your energy somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Annie and Eric, I love that advice. I think it's so useful to have. I think this is why, SEO as a profession is just never ever going to die, because the specialization required, the specialized knowledge required to know when to apply the best practices and the normal advice, and to know when to go, hang on, before we do that, let's investigate these items and see if that actually applies in our case, is crucial. Right. And you will get such a better result if you have someone with that knowledge and experience who isn't just, this is not the worst way to learn SEO. We all did it, but read the blog posts and apply. Right. It's just not enough.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes a simple change can make a huge difference. So for example, one thing that a lot of sites overlook when they have tags or, categories is just surfacing that tag link so that it links back, to that page. Because if you do that, if you have, 132 articles tagged with something and they're all linking back to that tag page, that's going to end up accruing a lot more authority, but sometimes that very simple step is overlooked, and then it's just like any other page on your site. It's not really, gaining the benefit.
Right.
All right. We didn't really get going until 5 after, so I'd like to sneak in the last 5 minutes here and get at least one more in. Is everybody okay with that?
Let's do it.
All right.
Roll.
And this is a cute one. We went from cute outfits to cute animals. This is from Dan again. And where can I find chipmunks? That's something we all wonder from time to time. Where are all the chipmunks?
I'm okay with that search too.
Oh, good. Okay. So what Dan is
cute.
What Dan is showing here is on the left side, you're seeing the mobile result, which is entirely local results, entirely mapped local results, literally telling you where you can find chipmunks. I guess at least businesses name chipmunks anyway. Whereas the desktop result on the right has a lot more diversity in it. So here's a great example of how different mobile and desktop results can be, something we want to be thinking a lot about as Google is approaching the mobile first index. Take it away, Dan.
Yeah, so I think this illustrates the strength of localization in queries that could be seen as ambiguous, and I think in this instance Google should have included a bit more diversity in their mobile results. What I'm pretending that I'm looking for an animal in this case, but I have a 3-year-old daughter, and chipmunks would be a great place to take her to, and I think the sheer volume of mummies and daddies looking for chipmunks, finding it, choosing it as their preferred result, tells Google, okay, well, chipmunks popular, so we're going to put more of them in the results. But if I was actually looking for cute animals, I would be seeing absolutely zero useful results in this instance. So we're seeing a case where localization signals just override everything else. And this is similar to domain crowding. I keep seeing the same business over and over again instead of giving me a wide variety of businesses. So that was kind of fixed in the desktop results a little bit more, but still quite heavily influenced towards that one particular business. So the next query now, the related for actual very specific fun activities for kids, which is the one that I discovered recently shared on Twitter, was somebody intentionally or accidentally included their business in the feature snippet. So I type in fun activities for kids, and it says in the feature snippet, in the title says, go to Burgers at Grilled. And
there we go.
This is a very long article. This is a very long article. It doesn't. This sentence doesn't start at the top. It's not at the bottom. It's not a conclusion. It's just like a weird in the middle of the article suggestion. One byline, sideline. It was completely insignificant. Google, for some reason, somehow picked. By the way, the article's called 40 Things to Do with Kids in Brisbane. from visitbrisbane.com.au. And it's so weird that that result was picked. I pinged the brand and they said, yep, we did it on purpose. Obviously, they're joking about it. But I think for those who wish to take advantage of featured snippets, now is the time. It's still a little bit silly at this point. And you could find a lot of opportunities where you can get yourself featured for a very wide variety of queries.
So curious about, can I just quickly,
I performed it here in Oregon. This is the Australian result that shows up.
Yeah, and it's the only
Do you
local
get the same
result.
thing?
Yes, I did, here in Boston. So it's the only local result we're getting, whereas the rest resemble your desktop event. You're getting that so strongly localized because you're there. You're near the Chipmunks amusement park. But it's so funny. Yeah, when I say, where can I find chipmunks? We both get that Australian result.
We need to look into their local SEO. They've done some stellar local SEO work.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Ranks in. I mean, if you're ranking for a query like that with a local result 9,000 miles away from the location,
They've redefined local.
yeah.
All right,
amazing.
This has been a fantastic hour, and folks, we have a repository of more of these results than we even covered in this hour. So we could certainly do this again sometime or look at those. But if you enjoyed this, tweet at any of us, find us on Twitter, let us know what you thought. If you want to see more shows from us like this, these kind of investigations and thought experiments right live in front of you, we'd love to hear from you about that. Thank you for watching. Deep thanks to Annie, to Dan, to Eric and Rand for being such great.
And to you too, Mark.
Well, I had fun doing it. Always good to hang out with you guys. It's always best in real life, but this is the next best thing. So thank you for this, Google and all the technology gods. And everybody, last word from everybody in the panel about anything we've talked about?
Well, I was going to mention that the Stone Temple folks have a YouTube channel, which is where you're watching this, and you can subscribe and see their videos there. So you should do that as a non-self-interested party.
And your tip earlier was always end your video with a call to action. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Indeed.
Following Annie's advice.
Anyone else? All
No,
right.
I think my last piece of advice would just be, make sure that you don't just take what you read or hear at conferences at face value, because we're marketers, sometimes we just bullshit just to have a good slide, I did this one thing and here was the result. I can't tell you anything that happened in between, but it's really amazing, so do this one thing. But I just would highly recommend that you test for yourself and see what works, and just be careful in about just doing things at carte blanche.
And now that Annie's helped Eric's channel earn the explicit tag, anything?
Oh no, sorry.
No. All right, Dan, any last words?
I'd like to follow up on what Annie said. I think everyone needs to test and experiment on their own. The ideas we put forward and things we do just to inspire people. And I think if you want to find out your own circumstance, your own situation, what matters to you in your own context, I think it's the most important thing to A/B test or multivariate test, even with your titles and snippets. Keep experimenting. One example is that, thin content. We spoke about thin content. We heard a lot from Google. So I did a personal experiment. I removed 80% of my lowest blog content, lowest quality blog content, expecting some magic effect. What happened? Nothing happened. I just simply removed the content that wasn't good enough, and that's it. There was no ranking benefit, despite what everyone says and despite what Google says. So that was my experience, and it showed me that nothing happened, and that's okay. So
and Moz,
make your own conclusion.
Yeah, we did the same thing Dan did and saw the opposite results. So to your point, testing super important. Everyone's situation can be different.
So I'll just add my last word from my increasingly dark room. This is the first time I have tried to do any video in this room, and I realize now that the lighting is horrible. But anyway, especially now that it's dark here on the East Coast. But that's beside the point. Hey, there is no such thing as one algorithm or two algorithms or three algorithms. You got to look at every single search result that matters to you and think about them independently and develop your strategy accordingly. So that's one of the things that makes SEO so much more complicated today than it's ever been. So.
All right. Well, thank you, IMEC panel. Thank you so much. This was fun. I hope we can do it again. Like I said, get in touch with us on Twitter or wherever you can and let us know what you thought and your thoughts. We appreciate all the people that chatted along with us and watched today. Thanks again, everybody. Eric, you got the control panel, so you unplug us.
And we are going off in 1, 2,